Ladies and gentlemen, delighted to be joined with trainer Kevin Barry. How are you, Kevin?
Adam, I'm doing well, mate, and great to be talking with you and great to be on Pro Boxing Fans.
Good man. We're much happy for having you as well. Okay, let's get. Oh, first of all, how's things in New Zealand regarding coronavirus? I see your Prime Minister's been bragging about how there's no virus over there or something. Is that correct?
Well, I tell you what, Jacinda Ardern's got a lot to be very happy about. And when you say she's bragging, she's a pretty humble lady, but she's done an amazing job. In fact, the people of New Zealand have done an amazing job because really, to be honest with you, Adam, it's like 2019 here in New Zealand. Everybody is going about their day-to-day lives as they would have in 2019. The only major difference is obviously our borders are locked down. Anyone entering New Zealand, which is mainly just New Zealand residents coming home, they have a 2-week quarantine period, and we can't travel overseas. But other than that, everything is fantastic here. And also we're right in the middle of a very nice summer in New Zealand. We've got the America's Cup on, and we've got a big fight that you may have heard of. Joseph Parker versus Junior Farr, number 3 in the world versus number 6 on the 27th of February. So we've got a lot going on here, mate.
Yeah. I hear there's, what's the thing coming out? Kanzuk, UK, New Zealand, Australia, Canada or something all coming together. But anyway, we're moving well away from boxing there. Okay, so the coronavirus thing is very relevant because it means you're allowed to have a boxing show on between your 2 biggest stars. There will be a crowd then. Am I right in thinking?
12,000 people is a full house at the Spark Arena, yeah. And the sales have gone exceptionally well. In fact, when the fight was originally scheduled for the 12th of December, all the corporates had already sold out well in advance. So it's a fight that people have been really waiting for, and we also feel very, very privileged the fact that we can have such a big crowd for a fight. In fact, it's a full house, and I believe it's the only full house in boxing since this nasty pandemic broke into the world.
Yeah, I'm based in Latvia. We were doing shows, but we were having to use the local nightclub. And that you get about 1,000 in there. So that is great news for New Zealand, and hopefully a sign of the future for the rest of us. So back to you personally. You're usually based in Las Vegas. So during this whole thing, you've been back home, or your old home in New Zealand.
No, I tell you what, Las Vegas is home for me now. Yeah, I've been there 17 years. New Zealand will always be a part of my heart. There's no doubt about that. But look, mate, I've been here since the beginning of October when I flew in with my wife, Tanya, and son, Taylor. And Tanya left just prior to Christmas to go back and spend Christmas with our other 2 children. My son, Taylor, was here with me, assisting me in Joe Parker's camp. And then we got very busy ourselves back in Vegas straight after the new year. And so he went back home, and he spent the last 5 weeks conducting Maxime Vlasov's training camp in our gym.
Oh, right.
Vlasov's fighting Joe Smith next Saturday for the WBO 175-pound world title.
Ooh. Good stuff. So lots going on. So we've had a rescheduling due to a blood problem from Junior Farr. Obviously, we're a couple of weeks away from the fight now. Everything seems to be okay on that point in terms of your opponent's health. Everything look okay there?
Well, we hope so. He's been very, very quiet, and Joe and myself have been doing a bunch of media, and David Higgins has been busy promoting the fight as he is the promoter, and their camp is very quiet. But we've been told that his hemoglobin levels are back to normal. He's training well, and he's going to be ready on the 27th of February to shock the world and knock Joseph Parker out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can't really ask you to speak for Junior Far, can you? So I haven't reached out for an interview, but I've heard nothing back.
Right.
Okay. You must have had to do, Joe's must have had to do like back-to-back camps almost. How's that been with you had the cancellation? Did that mean you could just have a nice Christmas and get back to it after you had a nice Christmas dinner? Looking at the
well, I'll tell you what we actually did. We'd originally I had Joe and I had completed 5 weeks of a 7-week training camp before Junior withdrew from the fight, and we were able to postpone the fight. Now, during that time, Junior apparently had to have some minor surgery. We used that time to get both of Joe's elbows operated on. The left elbow on the 1st of December and the right elbow on the 11th of December. There was once again, he'd had a problem with bone chips, and even though he was in quite significant pain and discomfort, he was still going to go ahead with the fight. But we used this as an opportunity to clean them out, and so it's worked to our advantage, because sure, we would have liked a little bit more time of recovery, but he's punching pain-free in the gym. His right hand is nice and straight now. All the calcium deposits and bone chips were removed. His right arm that once again was unable to be straightened is now straight. So a lot of positives came out of that for us.
Okay, good. So almost a blessing in disguise, touch wood.
It really was.
Good stuff. So in terms of Joe, I remember we've done so many interviews over the years, but I remember there was one of his fights, I think it was the world title fight, and he missed the birth of his daughter. Is that correct? Or
right.
Like that?
He actually, Joe's got 3 daughters.
Yeah.
And he's missed the birth of all of them.
Wow. Okay, so certainly committed.
Yeah.
The point I was trying to get out though was obviously he's been in New Zealand the whole time. Obviously you live in Las Vegas, but I'm aware Joseph isn't a proper resident of Las Vegas like yourself. He doesn't call Las Vegas home, I assume.
No.
No,
New Zealand is his home.
Yeah. Good. I'm on the right track.
And this was the longest time that Joe and I had actually, in our 8 years together, by far the longest we'd ever been apart, because we've gone back to back. Some years I want to say 2014, 15, and 16, we fought 5 times a year, doing our training camps in Las Vegas, traveling back to New Zealand 2 weeks prior to the fight, staying in New Zealand for 2 weeks, and then flying back to Vegas. So, he has practically lived in Vegas far more than New Zealand in the first 7 years of our relationship. But when we fought last year against Shaundell Winters on the 27th of February, the exact same date that we're fighting this year, and our plan was for him to go back home, have 3 weeks back in New Zealand, come straight back into camp, and we were looking for a huge 2020, and of course the pandemic broke out, and so he had 8-9 months in New Zealand, training by himself, doing a big strength program, and I came down once we had secured the fight with Junior Far, which was a fight that really we were very fortunate to be able to put together, and it was only because of the stars being aligned during the pandemic, and that we could have crowds in New Zealand that were able to stage that fight. But it's a big fight. Junior Far is undefeated. He's 19-0. He sits there at number 6 in the world with the WBO. Joseph Parker's number 3 in the world with the WBO. So, when you have 3 fighting 6, it's a very big fight. We would say that there's a very strong possibility that the WBO would want to appoint the winner of that fight to their number 2 position that Joe Joyce sits in at the moment. But, he got that when he beat Daniel Dubois, and Joyce was ranked 11. I would say that 3 fighting 6 is a much bigger fight than 2 fighting 11.
Yeah, you'd have a very strong argument there.
And let's remember, Joseph Parker is the former WBO world champion, defended that title twice. we fought 10 times for the regional WBO belt on the way through. So we've given massive loyalty and support to the WBO. We're asking for it back in return.
Yeah. So have you got any confirmation from the WBO? Obviously, you would go up the
No, we haven't. We haven't.
Yeah.
We're in discussions. You know, obviously, that there's talk of Usyk fighting Joyce for an interim belt. For Usyk to step aside and let Fury fight Joshua. There's a lot of irons on the fire at the moment, and a lot of things in play. So we'll just be putting our case forward like everybody else, but it all comes down to us on February 27th that we take care of Junior Farr and we take care of him in convincing fashion.
Yeah, well, you guys sound very focused on that 27th of February. Obviously, there have been some posters flying around and things like that. Obviously, we're focused on this at the moment. I did want to ask you about, obviously, you as the trainer, and in boxing, you do look at some of the other people in the division. What did you make of Usyk's step up to obviously it was his second fight, but to fight Chisora? What did you make of that contest, Harry? Kevin?
I think fairly predictable. I thought he won the fight convincingly. He looked better than he looked in his first fight with Chaz Witherspoon.
Yeah.
And, you would expect as time goes on and he gets more comfortable carrying that extra weight, that he would continue to improve. He's a guy, he's an intelligent fighter, he's a skillful fighter. I don't think he's ever going to be one of the big punchers in the heavyweight division, but he's definitely going to have the output and the skill level to be difficult for anyone. In saying that, I just feel that it's going to be very difficult for him against the real big men of the division.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. So people are gonna have to wait and see, I suppose. What did you make of Dubois against Joyce? What did you make of that fight, Kevin?
I thought it was a tremendous performance by Joyce. I thought he boxed beautifully. I think he showed just how overhyped Daniel Dubois was. A guy who had a lot of pressure put on a young man, a lot of people promoting him as the next Mike Tyson before he could actually fight. He was, he's a strong, powerful guy. He possesses great power, but his skill level is definitely still something that they're working on. It's a work in progress. But he has age on the side. I didn't like the way the fight ended. I didn't like his body language a couple of rounds before that in the corner. But I thought it was a great victory for Joyce, and one of the nice guys in world boxing, and he deserved a big win like that.
Have you had Joyce at your gym with Joe sparring?
I've had not sparring with Joe, but my other heavyweight Guido Vianello sparred hundreds of rounds with Joyce. And Joe Joyce's management, Adam Morley and Sam Jones, friends of mine, and so for them I was thrilled. They're good guys and they deserved all the success that comes their way.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about Daniel Dubois there being maybe rushed a bit. Obviously he
was overhyped.
Yeah. So you've had that. Do you think they rushed him too quickly, or do you think it's purely he's overhyped, or a bit of both?
No, he was overhyped, and I think they needed better tests for him along the way. He was completely overmatched in fights where, the people that he was fighting against never had the true ability to allow him to grow in the ring and learn during those fights. And he was so dominant. And when you are so dominant, it's very hard to keep up with the development of your skill set. And I think we saw that against Joyce.
Yeah,
I think Joyce's jab, especially his double jab, just destroyed him. Just picked him apart.
Definitely, Kevin. I couldn't agree more. Obviously, you've had Joe at a sort of similar situation a few years ago. Not obviously didn't lose at that stage in his career, but having a sort of guide him through that heavyweight division. Like you had that fight with Takam, which was really tough, and he had those sort of those testing fights that that got him.
You know, yeah, Sherman Williams, Alexandra Dimitrenko.
Yeah.
You know, guys, fights that you learn a lot about yourself in. The Francois Botha fight that he had in the 6th fight. You know, so, Takumi had in his 19th fight, and here we have Junior Farr, who's 19-0. It's like Joe is his Takum fight.
Yeah.
You know, we'll find out whether Junior Farr can step up like Joseph Parker did. And like when we fought Takum, it was a life and death fight. But these are the fights that you grow as a fighter in. These are the tests along the way that you make sure, and you give yourself validation that, yes, we've done the work in the gym. He has improved and developed in all aspects of the game to become a real contender. And you must have these tests. And I don't think Daniel Dubois had those tests.
Yeah. Well,
so when he was up against an A-class guy, I think he struggled.
Yeah, definitely, man. So much going on in your division at the moment. But what I wanted to really talk about is boxing in New Zealand. I've never actually been to New Zealand. So I always have an obsession with places I haven't been to. What I'm trying to work out, what's the word from the man on the street about boxing in New Zealand at the moment? Compared it to...
Well, I think there's a lot of hype around boxing here at the moment. And, a lot of people have had, a lot of joy watching the success of Joseph Parker. And it's obviously put a lot more fighters in the gyms. Corporate boxing is a very big business here in New Zealand. A lot of business people and just the normal person on the street are challenging themselves to go into corporate boxing. So there's a lot of those sort of shows, but it all packages up to the actual sport of boxing, and it does good numbers. There is big interest. It's a sport that definitely has a far bigger identity now than it had, in the years when I was fighting, and even the decade after my career. So it's pleasing. People are talking about it. It's one of those things, in bars and restaurants and that, especially now that we have this big fight less than 3 weeks out. The promotions on the television are starting to kick up. There's a lot of hype and a lot of interest about boxing in New Zealand.
Good to hear. Great to hear that. Really is. So I wanted to talk about Matchroom Sport. Obviously, you're working with them. Seems to be going pretty well. What I wanted to find out, I don't know if you'll know the answer to this or not, but Eddie Hearn's on about doing shows in all the different corners of the world. Obviously, his name is on the show, but it's sort of David, yes, who's doing the legwork, I assume, there.
Well, Joseph Parker is promoted by Matchroom.
Yeah, he is definitely. He's got promotional.
Joseph Parker is under contract to DAZN, and it's without the guidance and approval of both those commodities, this fight wouldn't be taking place.
Okay,
it's as simple as that. We have this is a fight outside of our contract, but in saying that, the fight is being shown on DAZN in the UK. Cool. It's been shown on DAZN in the US as well. It's it's around the world. It's on DAZN. So they have and obviously Eddie Hearn has a big interest in this fight because after this he's got one fight left with Joseph Parker's 3-fight contract. That fight will possibly either take place in New Zealand or the UK, depending on the opponent and depending on whether our borders open up. And then we'll be looking to. We're obviously, with the contract that we have with them, if there's going to be an extension, they have first right of refusal. Okay. So, it's a business relationship that theoretically could go on for a lot longer.
Yeah. I've heard you, I remember you saying it previously, you've been very happy working with both those two companies. So,
yeah, Eddie's great to work with. And it's been difficult for him. You imagine the number of fighters he has on his book and what he's had to go through and the juggling he's done in the last 12 months. And I think he's done an extraordinary job to be able to actually put shows on in the UK under extreme circumstances and try to keep all his fighters happy. It's a real mission.
Okay.
Fantastic. And the credit to him.
Yeah, definitely. He's been doing a great job. So this will be my final question, actually, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But during this, you're talking about this time of craziness and uncertainty. In terms of Team Joseph Parker, have you at all, or with some of the other fighters you're working with, maybe you're talking about Vlasov, all the people you're working with, have you and your team and all the people you work with, have you had to change your mindset, change what you'd say yes to, what you'd say no to, compared to, say, 2 years ago during the pandemic? Has that been something, because a lot of people I speak to have had to do that. They've almost have to rip up their rule book on what they used to do in the boxing business compared to now. Has that been the same for you guys?
Well, I tell you what, we were very, very blessed in a way that we had a private facility. So we weren't relying on the public.
Yeah.
Having a private facility meant that we had 100% control over it. So we had a germ-free, a COVID-free boxing gym. We had very strict procedures for anyone that came in there, gloves, masks. When we were bringing people in for sparring, the only time the fighters took the masks off were when they were actually in the ring sparring. Wow. With the hand sanitizer, we were taking temperatures when guys came in, and we also were very reliant on getting everyone tested on a regular basis, and we're still doing that now. Yeah. You know, as I just mentioned to you earlier on, my son's been running Maxim Vlasov's training camp, and you know, we've been testing all the sparring partners every week. Vlasov's been tested multiple times during his stay in Las Vegas. Yeah. So you know, we're keeping on top of everything, and I think you also have to have a rule book and a guideline where you can't just have people running around doing what they want to do, that they all have to commit to actually the rules and guidelines that you put in place. And if it means, hey, you go to the supermarket, sure, if you have to, you can also get your groceries delivered, but you don't go and mix with people. Yeah. You know, you don't go and put yourself in a situation where you can pick up the virus. You know, my son also works with, we've got an NFL team called the Las Vegas Raiders. Yeah. And we have quite a few of them training personally in our gym. And they do that because they know our gym is clean. They know it's reliable. They know we have strict protocol and procedures in place. It's a safe place to work out, and this is what, more than anything else, over the last 12 months, professional athletes need to feel that comfort, that security, and that safety in the places where they train.
Yeah, I suppose it's, yeah, I know a lot of people who get it. I can see the comments coming up in my mind now, but even if you don't feel anything, you're still going to get pulled off the fight, even if you're feeling absolutely fine. So yeah, good to hear you guys are fully on top of that. Kevin, I think we'll leave it there. Yes. Unless there was anything you wanted to add. My friend. Thank you so much for talking to us. And
no, it's yeah, great to see you.